So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. It was a close competition, close combat, but we had actually a clear winner. So please, Mats and Kerstin, come up on stage. Yeah. So we have, you get each one a gift here, and it will help you with future pitching, I promise you. So once again, a big applause for Marchain and the lightweight ferries.
We start now to develop these ferries. So if you want to join us, please call us. There are perhaps some subjects that you can contribute to this big, very important project. Thank you.
Stardust, lady, stardust, spread your hair across your universe, magic, let us in.
And this was my way to introduce, actually, Lady Stardust. Karin Nygårds-Karlman, please take the stage. You're welcome.
Thank you. You heard a lot of exciting experience today, haven't you? We have heard about business roaming agreement, new products, platform buildings, cooperation between nations and regions and other parts. And my job now for 13 minutes is to tell you about the highlights that we have achieved for the last 3 years. And actually, I will not be able to do that in 13 minutes. So you have received this book, which is called Stronger Together, that is also summarizing what we have done and what we have achieved, and what our conclusions are after these 3 years of work. And also there are some recommendations for the future. I will try to talk to you about those as well. In this pamphlet, there's a lot of work, and you heard about that, a lot of people, and we have actually had a lot of fun doing this work. And right now, I just wanted to give you some example. I want to talk about actually 3 things that I would like to share with you, and that I want you to remember. And if you have further questions, we can talk about them later on today. And those 3 issues are drawn here on this by Ritis, which is actually, I'm trying to explain what it is. It is, the first thing I think you should remember of what we have been doing is the platforms, the networks, or as we try to call them, the rocket launch pads. Because these are the linkages that we have been trying to build for all this time. And these are the ones I think you should remember, and that are the sustainable platform on which we want to work and continue our work. Linkages and rocket launch pads is important. But it's not enough. We have to have some tools, of course, and we will talk about the tools. What kind of tools have we used to increase or to speed up these kind of linkages between all different partners? And we also want to see, can we create some kind of quality assurance and things like that? How do we use this tool and the knowledge that you all have put together and mix them and use them smartly? And then finally, I will share with you some of the results. You have seen those, but it's also good to see the facts and figures. What has this actually accomplished, this work that we have done? Okay, going to the first one, our launch pads. What do I mean by the launch pads? It is actually the platforms we've been working with. And one example that we have and that we managed to create is called the BSR Innovation Express calls, which we launched in it came as an idea based on the EU program, and we built it up between different countries with the help of the Nordic Council ministers, and it was launched and decided within 12 months. You heard about that earlier. Thomas Aslev Christensen talked about that earlier. And I would say this one has not been able to be created without the platform, the cooperation that we built. Mainly, as if you look at the governmental structure of BSR Stars, we have this, what we call BSR Stars high-level group, consists of people from ministries in all 10 countries around the Baltic Sea, and then I mean also Iceland and Norway, they somehow are connected to the Baltic Sea. And also the innovation agencies are part of this, and here we sort of have the framework, the knowledge of what is possible to do. In this high-level group we also add some regions because we think they are important to cooperate with. But by having this platform, it's been possible this quickly to talk to each other, and we have this as a stable framework within the EU Baltic Sea strategy. So it has a place, it exists sort of, and that means that we've been able to build this BSR Innovation Express call, which is sort of an add-on on this StarDust complex. Okay, and then I would like to also, another thing, while I think this sort of platform building or the launch pad is so important, is these 6 projects you heard about today. They are all in themselves cooperation, partnership, platforms, and they exist on a different level. The first one I talked about was between policymakers and the sort of operational levels, innovation agencies and regions, which also interact, of course, with companies. And then we have these partnerships. Here you have the clusters, you have the companies, you have the researchers, you have the universities, you have, and as advisory boards to these, you have regions, you have support financiers of all of these partners, strongholds that exist in every country that are interested that actually something is going to happen. And these platforms are the sort of the meaningfulness, I would say, for multi-level governance. If you look at, you have to talk to each other from the SMEs to the clusters to the universities to the regions, nations, macro region level or even EU. You have to sort of understand what is going on, and you have to talk cross thematic borders as well. So this is something I think you should remember. Yes, next page, please. If we go to the tools that have been used, you heard a lot about the tools today. Some of them were even explained here. And one of our tools to create the BSR Innovation Express is what I would call flexible financing. That's important, isn't it? Here, and you heard about that earlier this morning. Here it is a possibility that the nations can make decisions by their own to start up small projects, and together with the Nordic Council of Ministers, everyone sort of decide we want to do it at the same time or at the same place. And in order to do so, you can speed up the possibilities for the companies to meet, for the clusters to meet, and all that kind of things. This flexible financing can then sort of drive into EU project and so forth. But it's important to have this and have a possibility to act rather quickly when opportunity comes. Another very important tool that we used, especially in the BSR innovation, is matchmaking. And that can be used in different ways. I think you heard those today. The one we did here was to matchmake clusters in Copenhagen in April. We actually had 200 people, 60, 70 clusters around the Baltic Sea region, meeting each other, talking to each other, and trying to find ideas how to cooperate. And out of those, we got 28 new projects, mainly with the SMEs that is working has possibility to meet each other. And these So the matchmaking events here in different ways of doing it is something that help and speed up the meetings. If we then go to the other example that I have, and that I and on all these different projects, I have. We start again. They did a lot of matchmaking, but they used different tools that was developed by Innovation Norway, which was interesting, going into the depth in how the companies is working. Another tool that has been used is the strategic action plans. You heard about those, haven't you? Someone was talking about we have done strategic action plans, long-term planning together, trying to see where are we going to be in 2020. How can we add added value by working together, all these macro-regional partners working together to 2020? What do they do when they do a strategic action plan? Well, you have to look at what is the market potential of what I'm going to work with? What is the strategic idea? What partnership do I have? And what is my position in the context today? And what will it be in 2020? Are there sort of other activities that we can work with? What other partners should I work with? And what do we do? And these kind of challenges is something that all of our projects have to deal with all the time and being evaluated accordingly too. And some of them has also been rather angry, I would say, that why do you never give up? So I think that's extremely sort of a challenging way. But it's not enough, of course. You have to do, while you do this strategic planning, you have to work on short term as well. So what else did we say we were doing? This signal session, which is something that is so, it's a very good way of doing business intelligence effectively. Learn from, that's something the Finns have taught us. And here you can sort of pick up ideas from some very smart researcher or some good ideas that's happening in US or China or wherever. And by using telecommunication, of course, we can have video conferences, sitting with the expert teams in different countries, picking up these signals and trying to interpret them, what to do. This has been extremely helpful, especially when you look at, for example, Comfort and Living project, when they try to pick up ideas on how to sort of get a really good strategic idea, the multifunctional kitchen for elderly people. Okay, and then one more, the one that you heard a lot about, which is actually a result of a lot of work, the Innovation Camp. I would also show as an example of these tools. And here you heard, and you've been explained about how this has been going through. But what I didn't tell you was all the work they did before arranging this camp. I think Lotten, for example, told me that she has called Electrolux 100 times to make their chief designer participate. And now he's even coming here to tell you how excited he was about this work. So you have to really keep on doing this and believing that it's worthwhile. Okay, so those are some of the tools. I think we have developed approximately 14 different tools that we think are a little bit new and shaping help us develop these kind of networks. Okay, and then we go to some of the results, comparing with the one that we have. If you look at the BSR Innovation Express, that is one of the results we have, which have made us create add-on funding. As you think, we have been giving funding to this whole project, the StarDust project from the Baltic Sea Region program, 6.5 million euro. And by working with other programs, by working together, we managed to more than double the add-on financing to these kind of works. So the BSR Innovation Express is one of the results in getting us this add-on money, I would say. And then, of course, we have managed to get a lot of interested new companies to work with us. Only in the Comfort and Living, they said there was approximately 100 new companies participating, working with the innovative tools and measurements. In the whole project, we have more than 800 SMEs participating. and at least 150, 200 that has been deeply involved in different action, different activities, which I think is rather impressive in this sort of very effective way of working. So finally, going back to the beginning, what have I said today? Do you remember what I said? I've talked about these three things that I think is so important from BSR Stars. It is the platform building, the networks, the strongholds that are sustainable for the future, which we can use as launching pads for new activities and new dreams. We have the innovative tools that are developed by all the different countries together, and we have used the best one we could find in the different countries. And we have the results. We can actually see that it works. So this is, I think, is important lessons for you. So my recommendations for the future is actually that we work with this governance structure. It is so important to keep the governance structure. The Baltic Sea Region EU strategy is important because it gives us a framework. And the governance structure that we have in BSR Stars with a high-level group, with a sort of a management team that are more operational, and some activities with projects and platforms working together is extremely important. So this is something I think at least we recommend to continue work with, because it's a rather novel way of working, I think. It's not only projects. And secondly, I would like you to consider specifically the policymakers we have in the room. Please remember that we need flexible financing. I think early on when you mobilize and get things started, use national funds, use the structural funds that you have regionally, put those and mobilize the actors. And then when you get into the long term, if you want to get EU, other money, 3 years is not enough. Ask these people. 3 years is not enough. You have to have 3 years and you have to be evaluated. If you don't keep up and improving, of course you shouldn't continue. But if you are good enough, why not give them 3 years and 3 years, 6 years? Would be a rather good investment, at least, to the end of the period. And then finally, the last recommendation is that we sort of improve what we have learned from the StarDust or in this kind of cooperation is that we have to improve some of our frameworks as well. We have to validate the partnership. We have to teach to sort of help getting the partners going. They need a lot of support. And then later on, we can sort of make things moving. So this is what we have achieved. Thank you.
Our Lady StarDust, presenting all of our achievements over the last 3 years in 13 minutes. That is a big achievement. Very well done. I'd like to call up on the stage our discussants, and Karin, you need to stay up here with us.
Yes, I will. All right.
You can't run off. So I'd like to call up Karen McGuire from the OECD, working with regional economic policy, Alistair Reid from Technopolis Group, and also our 2 regional experts, Lennart Svensson from working with innovation and clusters in the government of Region Skåne, and Petri Räsänen, there he is, working with innovation and foresight at the Tampere Regional Council. We have these 4 experts here with us acting as some kind of discussants. If you think of kind of academic things, you get all these external experts reviewing the work and commenting on this. And we have both Karen and Alistair are working, I'll call them kind of the external experts working with analyzing the situation. And I'm going to start with Karen, who works at the OECD with regional policy and has done some work on innovation cross borders, kind of a recent report on this. And I'm going to get up your presentation here.
Well, tell you what, I'll start while that's going because I know it's a Nordic context and you guys are pretty prompt. So we'll respect the sort of expectations of the audience. As Emily mentioned, the OECD, we have a lot of different divisions, as you can imagine. Some focus specifically on science, technology, and industry. I'm from the group that focuses on regional development policy because innovation is one of the drivers of growth in regions, and we focus a lot on territorial cooperation issues. So we recently did a study that actually involved several cross-border areas from the Baltic Sea area, and in about 3 weeks or so it'll be available for you, along with a bunch of case studies that you can use as you see fit. But I think some of the lessons from this research could be interesting in parallels to what you're doing here across the Baltic Sea. So maybe I'll just click to the next slide. Being from the OECD, I'd get fired if I didn't put a slide up that had some international comparisons. So sorry about that. I guess some of the country labels are cut off by our co-discussants. But basically, just wanted to say a couple of things about innovation processes and why what you're doing seems to fit to what we see. First, it's just that you see, a tripling of scientific collaboration internationally. You see a doubling of co-patenting from regions from one region to a foreign region. And then on the bottom, we can see where some of the countries are in terms of firm collaboration, and maybe just highlight the sort of large firm, small firm difference, because I think that's where the involvement of the cluster organizations can become pretty important. Because clearly, it's a little hard to see, but you have some of these, smaller light blue lines, and this is where I think the sort of active use of cluster organizations that it appears you're doing in this project will be very helpful, because there's a big information gap, and they have a harder time going international, and so these kinds of programs can fill that gap, as well as, I guess, databases that are being developed that I saw were in the report. Another item, just the innovation strategy at the OECD highlights the complementarity, the multidisciplinary approach to innovation, which obviously these teams and platforms are following. One thing that we found in the cross-border work was just that there's a lot of networking to get to know each other, and that this did not necessarily lead to action. And so what's interesting that I noticed in the report here was just that you have a goal of having a sort of high barrier to entry and demanding qualifications to make sure that they really see that they're going to do something together. Because a lot of the projects that are funded, often with these cross-border financing pots, tend to do, let's get people from different jurisdictions together and we check the box, and then, we got the money and we can do something. So what's interesting here is this active effort to be selective. I think also there's, this tension between going with somebody nearby and global excellence issues. A lot of the evidence still shows that proximity matters. Now, some of the spatial decay literature says that it matters within like 100 to 200 kilometers, and sometimes, you can go a bit farther. But maybe one thing to highlight, we have somebody who was looking at some patent citation work and was saying that, there wasn't necessarily an increased probability of citing a patent with your foreign neighboring region relative to any foreign region. So clearly there are border barriers, and that proximity, even if it definitely helps, can't necessarily overcome these border barriers. Therefore, the work that's done by these committees to identify what these barriers are that would come out and be highlighted by these projects is something that then can help with the framework conditions for all. Another reason, this is the last slide, but I have a few more comments here on paper. I put this up because Emily Wise told me to. And basically, it was that these were some of the conditions we were looking at for the cross-border regions. And when I say cross-border, I mean the more contiguous areas, and that resemble a bit more of a functional region in that sense. I guess I would just highlight that a lot of these are still applicable to the innovation process in macro regions generally. I mean, the literature, Boschma has done a lot of academic work on innovation and different types of proximity, whether it's cognitive, social, institutional, geographic, etc. So these are some of the sort of items on the checklist we were looking at for cross-border, and I think, depending on what set of partners are involved, etc., you can see which areas are more or less favorable in any particular configuration. And I think I would just, highlight in particular, obviously the innovation system conditions, but one of the lessons that came from the cross-border work was that the other hard and soft factors, these other forms of proximity, actually were pretty important, and that sometimes even in the Nordics, Nordic space and or greater Baltic Sea space, you might forget. You think you're more similar sometimes than you really are. Now, in an international context, you're more similar than others, but when you get down to the day-to-day, sometimes people underestimated that. In terms of, let's see, I have, how many more minutes? We have, because we started late, so I don't get, we started late, all right. Okay, keywords that came up in their report that came up in our work, trust. It's true for the collaborations amongst the innovation platforms. It's true for the governance arrangements, etc. The value of the peer learning and building, getting these lessons from these international collaborations. Quality of selection was a big problem for the cross-border areas, which you have addressed successfully by having more innovation agency-oriented decision makers, whereas in a lot of other programs, that's the selection committees don't necessarily have the expertise. So you've overcome one of the gaps actually that we've seen in other situations. In terms of the flexible funding, obviously there's mainstreaming, there's common pot, and then there is alignment. Sort of three ways you can do this, and I know your report recommends a couple of these. If the idea is to align across national, regional, EU, etc., then this just becomes even more important. But it came up in a lot of the cross-border work. I would say that the interesting part of your governance with the high level to get the buy-in and the people who can actually make decisions about program rules, as well as the people sort of trudging through day-to-day, was also very interesting governance approach that addresses some of the challenges we saw in the other project. So in the last 30 seconds, some of the success factors we found in this project that I think might be interesting for you is really do it when it only makes sense. Because again, we get this, pots of money, and then we check the box and get everyone from different jurisdictions, and then it's really nice, and then they stop at the end and don't keep going. A little bit of flexibility also, because sometimes you might have a great partner that's, anytime you create a set of borders, there's always going to be some great person just outside the borders. So figuring out how to accommodate that. And then really using this as an opportunity to identify where the misalignment in program rules and strategies of the different countries can be taken up so that it facilitates it not only for these platforms but for everybody else. And I think maybe I'll just end on a last point, which was one of the success factors we said was publicizing success stories, and that's sort of the reason that we're here today, I guess, as well. So there were a lot of similarities between the OECD work and the report on this project. So,
Thank you.
Those are some really nice words, Karen. And now we're going to go to our second external evaluator. I'm going to turn to Alistair. And Alistair here is from Technopolis. And he, in 2011, did a report on innovation in the Baltic Sea region and put up some kind of challenges that need to be addressed. And also, more recently, he did an evaluation of EU strategies in macro regions generally, and had some comments on the Baltic Sea region macro region strategy. So then it's going to be interesting to hear from you. Have we been doing anything good, or what can we do to be better even?
Okay, thank you. I was very happy to have the opportunity to talk here today. I was at a previous event in Vilnius, I guess a couple of years ago now, and presented the results of the 2011 study we did. And I think I came here today to get a feel for what had happened in the interim period and what had come out of particularly the StarDust projects, which I think were certainly an interesting innovation to try and push the interregional approach closer to the real thing, either the end users, the aging people we saw, or the people who are going to have a long and healthy life after work, and how can we make their life even better, or the companies. And I think integrating SMEs and businesses in general into the work that we're doing as policy makers, as policy analysts, as policy implementers, as cluster practitioners is increasingly critical, and we see that in terms of the crisis and the effects that's had on business confidence, but also in terms of, I think, the chap from Nokia with his open innovation system for the Nordic Baltic region. You know, his wish to see that is very nice, and it's something we hear a lot about, but it's very difficult in reality to actually implement. And it's very difficult. I mean, I'm generally an evaluator or a policy designer, but when I've actually had to implement projects, I know how difficult it is to get companies to actually come to events, never mind get involved in the projects. And so I think one of the things I see is quite positive coming out of this, and I think it's something which people back in Brussels at the European Commission will be following with interest is the extent to which you're really able to mobilize companies. So you mentioned some numbers there in your presentation. We heard this morning the different projects, how they'd more or less been able to integrate companies or users, which I think is just as important. And certainly in the paper I did in the spring for the Commission had to report to the Council, European Council, in terms of the impact of the macro-regional strategies, and I was asked to do a sort of evaluation. It was more of a thought piece because we didn't have so much data and information, but I tried to kind of think through the sorts of impacts and processes and potential opportunities that can be derived from this. And certainly the BSR Stars and the StarDust projects linked to that were certainly, I think, an inspiration, and already been seen as an inspiration in the other macro regions, so the Danube region at the moment. There's going to be a third one in the Adriatic-Ionian region, but also I think more wider than that. So I think moving away from what I described as a sort of project-based approach, which has been pretty symptomatic, not just of interregional cooperation programs funded by the Commission or other organizations, but also of other programs. I think we see everything as a project, and we need to move away from that. And I think one of the things that I liked when I came to the first meeting in Vilnius a while back and heard about the BSR Stars was this kind of trying to ramp up, trying to move up to that platform approach and to have that cohesive vision for an entire macro region. And at the same time, it has to be, and I think that was just mentioned, it has to be realistic and relevant for people. And so linking it to the Baltic Sea strategy, saying what can we do to clean up water, what can we do to face the sorts of challenges we heard about in terms of the costs of transport that are increasing, what can we do to help active aging and so on, but through concrete projects involving companies. I think those sorts of challenge-driven approaches are also very interesting. So I think what I've seen and heard today has comforted me that you've made progress, and I wouldn't say I hope you're not going to cite me as an evaluator, because I think it's you want to do that yourself, and I see in the report that you've tried to put some structure on what are the sorts of indicators. What I think importantly is what time frame are we looking at? What can we expect from projects that have been launched that are pilot projects? We often promise lots of things when we write a proposal, and we realize after a year and a half, 2 years, well, it's going to take a lot longer. We need to get new partners in. Some of our partners dropped out, and that's a reality. When I'm evaluating clusters or other programs, I talk and listen to people about the reality of the process, because the process is really most of the battle, if not all the battle, and managing that process is critical. So keeping the companies and the users interested in your projects will be fundamental. And I think from that perspective, the future evolution of the governance model, it's a lovely word, we love to throw it around, but how you keep that governance model fresh, how do you keep things evolving, how do you keep your focus on user needs, on SME needs, this will be a real challenge, because the risk is that you just become another interregional structure that's dependent on more or less public finance and maybe given some money to fund projects with, and you fall back into the sort of standard policy making process. And I think increasingly we need to find new ways of delivering policy. I think the policy design that I see as I wander around Europe, everyone can produce a nice glossy report that looks wonderful, and has the right buzzwords in it. And we're all producing smart specialization ones at the moment to send to, I don't know if Marek's still here, but people like Marek from the Commission. And I'm looking at some of those, and of course there's huge opportunities in all those reports around the Baltic Sea and the other macro regions for cooperation, for saying, well, we've got this in our region, you've got that in your country, how can we come together and work and combine those resources? But that's, again, that's very easy to say when you then go back to the reality of, but we've got national funding programs, and I want to make sure my money coming from Brussels is spent as much as possible in my region or my country, and then that kind of dynamic breaks down. So the sorts of project-based, platform-based approach where you're driving that and then stimulating project ideas to come through from either challenge-driven approach companies or users, I think that really has to be encouraged in order to make this dream of some sort of European-wide smart specialization become a reality. So I think I would encourage you to keep thinking creatively about your governance structures at different levels in order to keep it fresh, basically. And then maybe one aspect which takes me back to sort of the European level is, at European level, the Commission's trying to get, the matchmaking activities you were talking about. It's trying to internationalize clusters. It's trying to bring clusters together. They've just asked us to do an evaluation of those initiatives, and they've asked me to look at SME impact. And I'm thinking, SME impact from, a project funded over 2 years at European level involving four or five clusters and cluster certification and labeling. And so, I'm quite nervous by this project. So I'm quite interested to see how, the sort of experience here could also be then ramped up another level to European level to say, actually, how can we get that impact so that it's not just another talking shop also at European level. And also, I think the macro regions and the sort of interregional approach can be really useful. We have these dreams of European innovation partnerships, and some of them are up and running and working already. But we also need sort of a laboratory. We need ideas coming up from a level of, Baltic Sea or cross-border or whatever, people putting together ideas that can then maybe step up and one day become a new European innovation partnership. So I think we need those different levels within the policy-making levels in Europe to be active and to be thinking in the same sort of dynamic way. So I hope also that some of the projects some of the pitches that we heard will come. So I hope to take a ferry from Tallinn to Helsinki soon that will be ultralight and run on fuel cells or electricity without any CO2 impact. And I hope that the other projects can actually show results in terms of jobs and everything we always dream about as policymakers. Thanks.
Thanks to you both, Karen and Alistair. I just wanted, before we move to our regional experts and feedback from these guys, I wanted to get the chance for Karin to react. It seems pretty positive, or what did you take from these reactions from?
Thank you very much for the comments. I'm really thankful for them, and also you highlighted some of the very important things that we worked a lot with, the trust issues and trying to build this consortia, trying to understand each other, and the time it takes to get to this process. That's thank you for. And the other issue is also to keep the creativity of the governance structure, to keep the creativity and maybe try to how do we change to keep it lively? And that's, I would very much get some ideas about that. Thank you.
All right. And we're going to move on to, you guys stand over here, and then we're going to get Petri over here.
Okay.
And I move somewhere.
Here's your clicker.
Yeah.
Let's see where we can, I move here.
Oh, you do? Okay.
It's okay, yes.
Somewhere on the side.
Okay. Good afternoon. Yes, it's great to be here. And after this huge flow of words and comments, I'm looking at this BSR collaboration from the regional perspective, from the region of Tampere, and from the kind of regional smart specialization approach that we have taken. Just to make my comments a little bit understandable, I'd like to present you our approach to smart specialization thinking. This is not a strategy, this is the approach, please. Well, it's all about creating new ecosystems, or wishing that new ecosystems will emerge, create growth, employment, jobs, and stuff like this. It is supposed to be based on knowledge, science, key enabling technologies, you know, this stuff. It is pretty easy, of course, to select a few key enabling technologies, some areas of science where the region has the best knowledge, but actually we don't think that is too smart, actually. It's about specializing yourself and selecting the things, but what is the important thing, actually, and the smart part of the strategy? It's about how you actually move from the basis to the ecosystem development. What are the tools? What's the regional toolbox that you have in your region to, in our case, we talk about talent generation and creation of sustainable and smart solutions for the future needs. We don't necessarily define, in a narrow sense, those areas of growth ecosystems, but we try to understand that it's the private sector that decides where the investment is going, where the opportunities actually are. And it's all about learning in the process of value creation, and it's about facilitating. The role of public sector is to accelerate this value creation and support the orchestration of innovation ecosystem. And what is also very important for us as a region is to create capabilities for business ecosystems to develop and do this capability building together with the best networks. So this is our approach. So basically, when I was listening the presentation of Karin's, there are a few questions coming from this approach, I think it's one of the key questions, as my colleagues were also commenting. The key question is really how to engage the private sector and add real value to business development. What are the tools of the public sector intervention that really add value, that engage private sector and provide new opportunities for them, opportunities that they are not able to create by themselves? We have been hearing a lot of stories about platforms and mentions about platforms and platform approach. We really believe in Tampere region that platforms and platform policy is the way to go. But it's also important to be pretty strict in the concept of platforms. When we are talking about innovation platforms, are the platforms that we are talking about really platforms? Or are they just a new name for networks or some set of services? By platforms, we really mean that there are strict, clearly defined processes. There are really well-structured tools for the innovation work, and there are clear interfaces from the platform to the users of the platforms and other platform components. We think in Tampere region that the platform approach is a way to go, but I fully agree with my colleague that it is not an easy way. It is a pretty challenging way, and we have to be careful and very concrete when developing this approach. When I was listening to my colleague from Tampere today, Jukka Saarinen, and his vision about this BSR level innovation platform, I pretty much share his approach, basically. I think one of the approaches could be that, because this is pretty challenging, we should be careful and selective in defining our approaches. So one approach could be to select some opportunity space or innovation area as a thematic area where we could try to develop a fully BSR level innovation platform. We could start, for example, smart mobility. Try to understand what kind of innovation platform would really support the development and adoption of smart mobility business development in the BSR region. We could start with Demola. Of course, it's operative and up and running. We could use this for student innovation. We could add some application development competitions, such as ITS in your pocket on top of that. It could be the second kind of platform component in this innovation platform. We could add common location-based services or map services from Google or from Here Corporation to provide this kind of technological platform for joint service development. We could add open data policies, open data traffic sources to this platform, even provide shared services in terms of computing. We could also add open, common and flexible funding procedures for demonstration projects and pilot projects. And this should also include effective cross-regional project portfolio management. And of course, the engagement of private specialized funding from angel sources and VCs would be another component in this platform. If we are able to identify this kind of tools that really could create a functionable platform for certain specialized areas, then we could reach the basic ideas of platformed innovation in Baltic Sea region. So basically, this was my first comments on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pepe. And our last presenter is Lennart Svensson from the Regional Council from Region Skåne, our host organization. Some comments from you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I would try to start with going a little bit back. Remembering as I was participating in the start of BSR Stardust, that at that time, as I remember it, the Baltic Sea strategy was very much built on the 4 pillars. It was very much focused on creating linkages between regions, people in the Baltic Sea area. And that is, of course, very, very important. It was very much based on place-based thinking, different regions, different cities. And what I saw was that this BSR Stardust was sort of the first really growth initiative built on innovation that really was going on or started at that time. This means that there is a difference between developing places in the Baltic Sea area, like Malmö and Skåne, cooperating with other colleagues, Tammerfors. We are forced to handle 2 perspectives. One is that we have a regional development strategy. I have my chairman of the board, Pontus, down there. We have a regional development strategy that is very much focusing on to make Skåne a very attractive place for companies and people. The other perspective, and that strategy is in many ways very uninteresting for others, because it's sort of a business plan for the region, and we can put it under the table when friends are coming in. When friends are coming in, it's very much issue-based. We can find challenges and issues that we have in common. I was in the past a manager of a hospital. Doctors don't cooperate if there isn't a patient. So there has to be a patient, there has to be an issue that brings us together. And that is very much the entrance to smart specialization. Because smart specialization is very much about doing this. So in Skåne, we have agreed with universities, companies, public actors on an international innovation strategy for Skåne. We have 3 areas, personalized health, smart materials, and smart sustainable cities. And these are areas for corporations, where we like to do things with others. And this is, for us, BSR Stardust has been a very, very useful tool for creating and starting up this kind of cooperation. For example, Petri and I and Tammerfors, Skåne will now cooperate on smart sustainable cities. We will do it, hopefully, with support from Vinnova, Tekes, and also our Swedish authorities and the Finnish authorities. This means that this is a multi-governance in reality, that we are doing this, hopefully, together. Some other things, I fully agree with you, Karin, that the value that is created here, and I will really try to emphasize that innovation is very much about people. And people and between people are relations. So the network is very, very difficult to measure in Excel or in the indicator your relation in your marriage and so on. So this is really about relations. That don't remember that the relation that we have, the network, is maybe the most important value. We have heard it a lot of times, hearing people saying, Philip saying, now I know who to call, and then we can arrange a meeting. Another thing I would like to stress is that doing this, working together on issues, there have to be these tools that you mentioned, Karin. I think that it's extremely important that we have tools that we can use together, and also that there are sort of multi-level governance that really works. Because today, and also in the BSR StarDust project, it hasn't been just Vinnova sending money to Region Skåne, if they do, or Teke sending money down to Tammerfors, and so on. It's very much about taking arms like this and working together. And I think that is also connecting to networks, that to make this work, we can't really just throwing money down in the system. We really have to work together. And BSR StarDust has really been a way where the national actors are solving problems together. And with regional actors, and we are doing with the clusters. And at the end, I would like to say that I have the opportunity to be chairman of a European Forum for Clusters in Emerging Industries. It is an initiative coming from the Commission, and it is focusing on how to use cluster initiatives really to be key players in the new world. And the policy roadmap will be public after in the beginning of next year, and I think that that the main thing on the first side will be new linkages needed, and this is very much about BSR StarDust. And having said that, there are a lot of issues in this. One is that using the fact that the value chains are no longer local. You know all that they are global. And there are a lot of discussion we had in this forum that linking, as we heard today, different actors, different companies with different, again, other companies. For example, we had a meeting, we have 6 cluster initiatives here in Skåne. We had a meeting with the automotive industry in Baden-Württemberg. We realized that Porsche, Volkswagen realized that they have to connect cars to the cloud. And they don't really have a clue. But we have, here in Skåne, we have 10,000 engineers, experts in cloud computing. So now we will bring these 2 actors and systems together. So finally, I think that BSR StarDust is really a success, and that the most important thing is the relation. And now it's up to us. I've also been in the military a couple of years. I think that it is now to put these in the chain of command to make everything happen. Thank you very much.
To Petri and Lennart's interventions, and then we'll have 5 minutes for some questions from the audience and have some discussion with the panelists. Karin?
Okay, thank you very much, both Petri and Lennart. I'm very much looking forward, working with you continuously forward as well, and working on smart cities will be a challenge. I think this could be a very new, creative way of working, trying to put these regions and companies together in the next steps. Thank you.
All right, folks from the floor, now's your chance. We've heard from our Lady StarDust, and what we've done, and it seems like we've gotten some good grades from the discussants or the evaluators or our teachers who we can learn from, and also some good ideas on how to make sure that we continue doing good things and improving going forward. How about some questions from the audience? Anybody?
Hello, my name is Christian Lepik from Estonia, and I have a question to Karen. I think if you look all over Europe, you can see that all the regions are speaking about collaboration, and we can see lots of seminars with a happy talk, but not that often with good results. So what do you think differentiates Baltic Sea region, and what can be the uniqueness here to really execute this collaboration as well? Thank you.
This Karen as opposed to that Karen?
You're Karen,
you.
you should call me.
Karen, okay, sorry.
To me?
Very good, okay. I think let me just say, Helsinki Talent, for example, was in our pool of cross-border areas, and the sort of unique combination of the strengths of e-services in Estonia with other ICT mobile applications and the sort of startup environment in Helsinki, there were some interesting opportunities to build on that. And there are a number of different cross-border areas that have the opportunity to become stronger nodes. And the stronger these different individual cross-border areas or regions become, the stronger then the full macro region would become. I would say, the reason we studied the more functional cross-border regions is because we thought that's where the economic spillovers would be most direct and obvious, because the projects are more linked to the industrial base of the location in question. But I think you just have to be realistic. This is a project, from what I understand, and I let the people who are responsible for the project respond to that, but the purpose here is about more creativity and learning, and also I think what could really benefit the area is that the institutions responsible for the policies and the rules find out where there are impediments to letting this happen naturally and spontaneously. And I think that's probably, in addition to the people relations, which are important to develop, that could unleash even more within this space.
I think there are different reasons why but the Baltic Sea area is a good opportunity. One is the culture. I think that we have sort of a common culture that we understand each other, even if we in the past have been fighting each other, some of us at least. We have a very strong culture that brings us together. Another is that the Baltic Sea region is a home market for a lot of very, very important companies. And the third is that the Baltic Sea region itself has a lot of issues that we can really cooperate on. So we are doing this right now, and I think that maybe one thing is that we didn't mention is that if we focus too much on cooperation with each other, we forget the outer perspective, because maybe one of the most important things to cooperate, the reason to cooperate is that if we will be able to cooperate, to compete with New York, New Delhi, whatever, we have to be more people together. So don't forget the other perspective, the other world.
We have one more question here from our neighboring macro region in the Danube, Sigrid.
Hi, thanks. Well, my name is Sigrid Winkler. I'm from the Danube Region Strategy. As I said, I'm heading cluster development there. And so I'm here to get inspired and to learn from the great example of the Baltic Sea region. I have to say, I have been very inspired today already. I have one question to Karen, not Karen, and another question to Alistair. To Karen, what would you say are the lessons learned? What would you do differently next time if you started BSR Stars? And to Alistair, what are the two main things that BSR Stars has done right that we could also cover in the Danube region? I already took away from your speech the challenge-driven approach, so I noted it. Maybe two more things. Thank you.
Okay, should I say what I would do different? And there's a lot, of course, there's a lot of things you can do different that you can increase. One thing is, of course, to get more time to the partnership in the beginning. Try to have this flexible financing when you're mobilizing and put the partnership together. Because when we were applying for money, of course, we had to follow the certain rules that are there, which also close to the flexibility. We had to be more creative in trying to add this on. And also to put the framework in the beginning when you start this project. The mobilization phase is so important to trying to learn to get to know each other and to really maybe put everyone in a camp for a week or do something like that to really get to know each other, to build the trust. And then the leadership. We have a good leadership, but it needs some kind of you also have to have a dialogue continuously to look at who is taking the lead in what. And also to look in the people that are involved have to look into themselves and say, should I lead this or should someone else do it, or how do we do this? This is important.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I think that the previous question underlines some of the difficulties that either the Danube region or Adriatic-Ionian macro-region, which is being developed, might face. I think the Baltic Sea region has had that longer time period to make those connections and start to build it, and the common cultural aspects as well. I think one of the issues is certainly around the process elements, and I think you see that also at national or regional level. If you look at the most successful clusters, platforms, etc., that have been developed, you see that whole process of helping partnership building going on, and not just about funding. So I think one of the aspects that was, I mean, almost curious here was that, you know, the Baltic Sea strategy was launched and we must do something, but there's no money. And so people had to, you know, as you say, you had to be flexible with the money. So, and in some ways, I think that's very helpful, because people are told, not told there's a pot of money, go and make a bid for a themed call, but come to us with ideas that are driven by interests of companies or users. So it's not just about the challenge-based approach. I think there are common challenges, you know, in the Danube region, water-related, as an example, also for the river management. So you can imagine common projects around the challenges of the Danube region. But I think you also have to have that process of almost stimulating people to look at the connections that they can make. And it's not about technologies, and it's not about scientific specialization in each of the regions. That's the wrong way to go, for sure. So I think you really need to find a way to stimulate the companies to come up through with projects. And I think that can be done through that sort of longer-term process. So be a bit modest also in what you expect to get into in the short term. I think those projects where you can actually start to bring together people to discuss issues, to test ideas, to have some of the innovative tools we've heard about. I think if you can apply some of those tools in your circumstances, we'll be successful. So I think patience is probably the second recommendation. You've got to be very patient and persistent. I think that's what we heard also from the people here in the platform today. So I think, you know, have the patience to give people the time to develop their ideas. Yeah.
Okay, there was one hand raised. If it's really quick.
Yeah, it's a quick, maybe not that quick to answer it. I don't know. Thank you for very excellent and very useful presentations here today. But listening to it, I wonder, because you all are public sector representatives or people being financed by public sector money as such. And then I wonder, how would a private sector representative have expressed him or herself being a part of the panel? Probably not an SME, but maybe not an individual company, but maybe a chamber of commerce or something like that. How would that organization relate? Could I ask you, even you are public sector, and then I ask you to talk about private sector, but could I ask you to address, how do you imagine the private sector representative would address the session here?
Okay, I'm going to give you each a chance to reflect on this, but then kind of your 10-second last words. So if you want to take the first one, and then everybody can have their 10-second last words, and then we're going to close down.
I asked one of the entrepreneurs a couple of months ago a question like this, and he said two things: buy my products and arrange innovation parties. And this buy products means innovation procurement. Innovation party means help me to get universities, public organization, companies work together. So I think that what they really would like us to do, and that is even more important than venture capital, is the first customer. That the first customer could be a lot of people in this room. So let's really start with ourselves, being a skilled customer, buy the products. And for example, we are starting with now a preemptive diabetes. Region Skåne will hopefully buy new solutions for preemptive diabetes. One of the companies that have the solution may come from Tampere. And how to arrange this, that is really a thing to do. Thanks.
Okay, if I were to sit and put on the other hat, I would say that this individual would probably say, get out of my way, and try to eliminate as many barriers as possible for me to do things on my own with the people I choose to do it with. And the other thing I would probably ask for is that, especially for the public procurement, that there are some sort of ease or harmonization of regulation so that if I can sell to one of these markets in one country, I can sell to the market in the other country. So hopefully with projects like this, which are not necessarily destined to do that specifically, one of the byproducts can be that these barriers are identified and then the responsible parties can help remove them.
Alistair?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, even if we're all public sector officials, or in my case, mainly financed by public sector contracts, I think we're all taxpayers, and we all want to get the most out of the money that's being spent from our taxes. So I think the company perspective is one of the things I was suggesting is a key plus here for the StarDust project. So getting companies involved at an early stage is critical, but that's, as I said, much easier said than done. So I think some of the challenges is making it relevant for the companies, particularly smaller companies. The big companies, if you talk to big companies involved in cluster organizations, they'll say, you say, why are you there? You don't really need the money. Well, they say, well, actually, it helps us to position within our global groups. So each type of company has its own reasons for being there. For the smaller companies, it can be about getting access to that specific technology, getting access to the market, etc., that's critical for their development. And I think we shouldn't underestimate those connections, those simple connections that Leonard was talking about, that we can create through these projects. And I think many companies also, if you're an owner of a relatively small company, 50 people, 60 people, what you need is a little bit of time, and the time to look and identify new ideas. So helping them to do that and make those connections, I think that's what I would expect from these sorts of projects. Give me a new idea, throw it into my mix of what's going on in my head, and maybe I can come up with a new idea myself.
Petri, final words?
10 seconds, right?
Yes.
When companies come to our office and talk about innovation platforms, they ask two things. Can I get new customers faster, or can I get access to better talent faster and easier? And if yes, I will work with your platform. Thank you.
Cohen, Lady StarDust,
Okay,
your final
thank
words.
you. Thank you. Having worked for Ericsson for 20 years and now moving into the public sector, I was thinking, what do I say? And what we wanted from the public sector was that they should buy our tools and equipment and be the first buyers and be innovative buyers. We used to have Telia as a very good buyer earlier on, and now we need the public sector to be our first buyer and to help us doing all these kind of things. So those are the shoes I think are important, and hopefully by doing this kind of cooperation we can help speed up these things. Thanks.
Thanks a lot to all the speakers and to the very interactive audience. Thanks. And now I hand over the